What is up, Philly? January 17th, 2024. It is HRS Late Nights. A little late tonight for your man, Tony Cutillo. Again, make sure you give us a follow at Heat Ratio Sports. You're following the YouTube page. You're liking and subscribing to the show. Obviously, call-in lines are open, and we have, as always, a ton to talk about. My man Joe was already pressuring me. He was like, yo, what's going on? What's going on? Why are we running late, man? Like, again, sometimes things don't work out, but it's all good. I got them all together. My man David checking in, as always, says I'm going for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this Sunday, and I'm going for the Green Bay Packers. And I tell you what, David, what's very interesting about that is just got done doing my Wednesday NFL draft cast like we always do for Win Daily Sports, and I was adamant about Tampa Bay taking care of business this week. So we shall see. But the big news, listen, we're going to talk a lot of different stuff tonight. A lot of different stuff. I was going to try to keep this to a 76ers / John Cena / hip hop little conversation, but then my man Nick Sirianni slipped right in the back door by coming out and breaking the news that it looks like he is staying in Philadelphia. Mike McCarthy is staying with the Dallas Cowboys. Nick Sirianni staying with the Philadelphia Eagles. And I'll tell you what, man, I need to hear what everybody thinks about that. And again, I'm not trying to get, copycat like all the shows, obviously. But again, it's the talk of not only Philadelphia, but on a national level. We're all talking about Nick Sirianni. We're all talking about the Philadelphia Eagles collapse. Everybody is talking about it. We talked about it nauseum last night. But again, Nick Sirianni back. Okay. Oh, wait, hold on. Okay. I like this, Joe. See, I was live, Joe, for like 2 hours. So I'm going into this cold. So right before I got on, I saw this, and all of a sudden you say Rossini backtracked her initial tweet. Interesting. I'm gonna have to go look at that right now, because again, that's what happens, right? These people, they come out and they're real quick, right? Real quick. He said Doug did the same thing until he met with Lori, then he was fired. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Because again, I'm curious now. I am really, really curious. What did she say here, Joe? So again, here we go. Though she writes, so her initial tweet, okay, and this is Diana Rossini, okay, who a senior NFL insider for The Athletic. This isn't a person that's just making up things, right? I said it all the time. But again, sometimes things get a little shady, right? So she originally comes out and says both Eagles GM Howie Roseman and head coach Nick Sirianni have been reaching out to available NFL coaches and coordinators, as well as coaching agents across the league, to evaluate potential coordinator candidates to join their coaching staff as they plan for 2024. Then she comes back and quote tweets and says, though this may suggest that Sirianni is safe, I'm told he has not met with owner Jeffrey Lurie, something that was not possible today because of logistical issues. Until that meeting happens, all bets are off. And then it says, an hour ago, Nick Sirianni will meet with owner Jeffrey Lurie and will be expected to have a plan for how he is going to improve the Eagles. This will include a pitch on potential new coordinators, assistant coaches, per sources. This is why coaches around the league have been contacted. So that's a lot of information right there. That's a lot of information. So again, like Joe says, still has to meet with Lurie. He says if he stays, he's a high-priced PR guy for pressers. That's all. I figured Eagles office said to back off a bit. It's going to be, I don't know what this means. I had like the whole part of logistics almost seems like the way I read between the lines here with all three of those tweets is essentially I'm looking at it saying, here's the logistics. They couldn't meet. And because they couldn't meet, they essentially were already told that he's going to remain as coach. And that's why he's calling around looking for coordinators. I could be dead wrong, but it almost seems like that's the way this is going to go. I think if McCarthy is back, I think Nick is back. Because again, I still think that they're going to look for a guy that they can't have. Still think they're going to look for a guy that they can't have. Right? You know, I love him like Rabel. He would be my number one option, but again, I don't think that they're willing to give up that power. So again, looking at this though, let's just, you know, before we get into some Sixers talk, because I think we owe it to the Sixers to continue to talk about them, right? But before we get into that, I want to see what everybody thinks. Again, Heat Ratio Sports, HRS Late Nights. I am Tony Cutillo. Make sure you get involved, like and subscribe. And again, we're doing some really cool things over here, making this late night show something to stick. Call-in line is open. You see it posted. You can comment. Well, you know, if you want to call, it's a little simple. All you do is take the link and you click on it and you will get live on the air. Now, Joe says, I see it as him and Howie made calls. If nothing is in place or they don't have leads, he's gone. Interesting. Interesting. Because we do know that Jeffrey Lurie is going to want, you know, definitely want a plan in place. And Sirianni is going to have to at least come clean about what has happened. That's for damn sure. But, you know, what I want to say, though, is, again, I still don't understand why all these things come out, right? I still don't understand why all these things come out. Because if they come out again, it still means that something inside that locker room was off. I mean, you heard Jason Kelsey even on the podcast with his brother talk about specifically a lot of things were off. Talked about a lot of that and said, no, that's not the only thing that was off. So that's the thing. Like when you think about it, it's almost like there's a lot of smoke and there's a lot of fire and there's a lot of things that are being covered up. Not sure exactly what they are, but obviously people were not on that same page. And it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. Adam checking in says, what's good, Tony? Says, I say keep Sirianni. He has a winning record and a Super Bowl appearance. Just get him some coordinators that know what the hell they are doing. Here's the problem, Adam. I don't necessarily know if Brian Johnson wasn't a good enough coordinator. And the reason why I say that is because I feel that Nick Sirianni essentially overruled a lot of those calls. That's what I think. And I continue to think that. So we don't really even know what Brian Johnson is technically capable of. We just don't know. So that's why I still say that you cannot keep Nick Sirianni. And I think if we do keep Nick Sirianni, I'm going to be honest with you, I think it's a wasted year. I think it's a wasted year because here's what you have to say to yourself. Here's a point that I don't think enough people are making. Okay? Here's a point. Oh, my microphone cut out for a second there. So, one of the points that I think that people have to look at is this team is going to have to basically rebuild. A lot of those contracts that we're giving out, obviously to Bradbury, obviously to Slay, a lot of these contracts that were given out were essentially ways to get there was verbiage in there, the way they were guaranteed the money, they were essentially 1-year deals. Obviously you have a Brandon Graham issue, and I don't mean an issue as far as, you know, do you bring him back? Fletcher Cox, do you bring him back? And obviously, listen to some guys, it definitely seems like he's not coming back, right? So this team is going, if Jason Kelsey retires, You're talking about a changing of the guard. Let's not forget that Lane Johnson isn't a young buck, man. Like at any time, you never know. Lane Johnson had a ton of medical issues, when it comes to mental health that he had to get through. A lot of adversity he had to face. It may not be a physical thing; it could be a mental thing to where he may decide to hang it up. But my point is, now you are trusting Nick Sirianni to not only rebuild this team, but get trust in new players. And again, guess what? And invite a new system with new players that essentially is not going to happen in 1 year. So if that's the case, you're telling me Jeffrey Lurie's telling us that Sirianni is his guy for at least the next 2 years, because that's what's going to have to take him in order to implement a lot of these things. And all the people that talked about you can't win because you change too many coordinators and you have too many system changes. Guess what? I think they were right. Well, guess what? If we do it again this year, we're right back at step one. And that is what's crazy to me. So I still think it would be a wasted year. My man Starship, my man, I didn't listen to your message yet. I was actually getting off the air, going on the air. Just listen to it later. So I apologize, because I'd like to get right back to you. Says, so you think Sirianni held Brian Johnson back? Yes. I really do. Listen, man, I still think that's why you had a lot of those looks from Jalen Hurts. What I mean by looks is I'm not talking about passing looks. I'm not talking about, the looks on the field. I'm talking about his eyes, his frustration. I still think that's why there's a lot of animosity brewing within that team, because again, Brian Johnson is Jalen's boy. And I continue to say this. Brian Johnson was one of, if not the main reason why, along with Shane Steichen, on why Jalen Hurts had such an unbelievable year last year. Brian Johnson worked with Jalen hand in hand. Brian Johnson knows the limitations of Jalen Hurts. He knows the strong suits of Jalen Hurts. So again, let me say this. You heard Slay come out today and talk about the coordinator change. You heard Slay come out and talk about when you're trying to learn two different systems, even though they're professionals and they have to do it, it is difficult. That sometimes you get some things jumbled up, right? So let's think about that. So if that's the case, maybe that is why the offense looks so crazy, because you have Brian Johnson wanting to employ one system, and you have Nick Sirianni overruling that system, and then giving Jalen Hurts no checks to be able to change the system. And lo and behold, that's why you get chaos. So again, this all signifies the shortcomings of coaching, which is Nick Sirianni. Again, you don't fire the players. You fire the manager. You don't do it. So this guy is single-handedly telling you he is in charge of everything. He's the guy that it's his offense. He said it multiple times. This is my offense. This is my offense. This is what he's saying. So essentially, if it's your offense, then maybe you need to be like Kevin Stefanski and you just need to call the plays. But guess what? I think that Shane Steichen overruled Nick Sirianni last year. I think Steichen had that power to go over Sirianni and say, no, this is what works. And I continue to say this, that Brian Johnson was not the hire of Nick Sirianni. Sean Desai was not the hire of Nick Sirianni. He was just told who to hire, because, again, I think it was a package deal. You sign Jalen to the big money. He takes some of that discount up front like Tom Brady. In essence, for a deal to say Brian Johnson is going to be the OC. Think about it, man. Think about it. And now Sirianni's so pissed that he doesn't have that he doesn't have a shot. And then at the same time, what happens? It creates chaos. It creates animosity. It creates a confusion to where Nick goes, all right, well, I'm going to show you. I can get the call on the field, so I'm going to overrule the offense. I didn't want this guy anyway. Why does he keep saying it's his offense? Why does he keep saying it? I just, at the end of the day, something's got to give here. Something's got to give. And to me, it's time to move on, man. It's time to move on. My man Starship says, hell no, the next 2 years. Exactly. Can't do it. My man Joe says, how do top colleges change coordinators every year with young kids and new rosters and don't miss a step? Surround yourself with winners, not projects. Right? Ask Nick Saban. Does it every year. Every year. Doesn't matter. Does it every year. Star says it makes sense. Too many cooks in the kitchen. My man Javon, Javon, what's up, buddy? He says, if people didn't read that ESPN story from Tim McManus, it was telling, especially about the offense. Guys didn't know who were calling the plays. See what I'm saying? Furthermore, Javon says there was a situation in Washington this season where Johnson wanted to throw on 3rd and long, but Sirianni wanted to call a run. Here it comes. It's all making sense. Adam says, so if Brian Johnson knows Hurts and he knows what he can do, why didn't Sirianni let him do his job? Because, again, Adam, I'm telling you, he didn't want Brian Johnson. Sirianni did not want Brian Johnson. That's why. He was given Brian Johnson. I'm going with that story. That is my own speculation. I'm going with Nick was told to hire Brian. Remember, we all thought it was a done deal, thinking it was. Why was it held up? Because Nick didn't want him. Nick didn't want him. Nick didn't think he was ready. That's why. Think about it. Nick didn't think he was ready. And instead, it got jammed down his throat. And just like my man Starship says, sounds like Nick's an egomaniac and lets his bravado take over. 100%. All that cockiness on the sideline, all those looks, everything. Again, it's all making sense, right? As we talk this out again, this isn't hot takes. We're just trying to make sense of a situation. We're not going on social media. We're not creating radio shows that are creating fabricated arguments and debates and we're this is why I love this, okay? Because we're literally sitting here trying to figure this out. We're racking our brain and trying to say to ourselves, what happened? How could so let's try to put the piece together. Are we saying this is what happened? No, we're speculating based on the information that we're given. You have Javon checking in, talking about Tim McManus' article. You got Starship checking in, who has a difference of opinion. You have Adam asking questions. You have Joe checking in, talking about the college system, why it's okay for them. And then you it's all starting to make sense. Javon says another blurb in the story talked about how Hurts' vision of the offense was to go with short intermediate routes when the skid was happening. Again, makes sense. Why he's pissed off, going for long balls, these long developing routes that were giving him nowhere. Like Seth Joyner came out and said he had nowhere to check. So this is all starting to make sense. And here's a great point by Javon, says that the Eagles didn't promote Johnson. He would have been an OT elsewhere, which is why right now he has a good reputation. And that's why he's getting named at a ton of interviews for head coaching jobs. He's a ticket, man. He's a ticket. And the Eagles jammed it down Sirianni's throat. Not to say I'm in love with Sirianni, but what I'm saying is I don't think he had a choice. I think it all makes sense now, man. I think it all makes sense. It all starts to make sense. And I think other players probably saw it. And other players were probably like, Jalen, you need to step up and say something. And when Jalen didn't step up and say anything, because Jalen's not that way, Jalen's not that guy. He wasn't brought up to be that guy. Jalen kind of just let it play out. And then it makes sense to why him and AJ were doing things off the cuff. They were trying to finally, they were like, you know what? We're just doing it, man. We're just doing it. Like, and that's why, you see so many of those false starts. You see things on Jason Kelsey, which is odd, right? You think about that because nobody was on the same page, because they knew there was a lover's quarrel basically between Jalen Hurts and Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni. It all makes sense right now. It all makes sense. Joe says then Nick should have taken over play calls. I think he's a loudmouth coward, a guy that yells over others when he's wrong. 100%. 100%. You could tell. You could tell. And you know what? What happens, Joe? We know what happens, right? That falls on deaf ears. It always falls on deaf ears. He says long routes with constant blitzes is flat out stupid and shows why they couldn't score. It's ridiculous. It really is. It's ridiculous. Especially here. You know what, Joe? Here's the funny thing. Jalen's looking at this, like Javon said, one of the blurbs in the story talked about him wanting to go with short intermediate routes. Why do you think that is? How many times did we see AJ Brown get hit for a 6-7 yard slant and it was automatic every time? It was automatic every time. Every friggin' time it was automatic. Why do we get away from that? You have one of the best tight ends in the league coming off a block and eking out into the flat. Again, short intermediate routes. But no, we want to go with these deep posts. We want to go with these up and outs and these go routes and these double moves that took way too long. And again, you have an offensive line that is built to run the ball. And now that you're making them pass protect 70 to 80% of the game, dude, that they're going backwards most of the game, man. They're getting tired. They're getting tired. I mean, this is all like if all of us right now can see this, why the hell can't they see it? And that's what I don't understand. That's what I don't understand. Do they choose not to see it? Because again, we also know that Howie and Jeff don't want to admit whenever they're wrong. So again, like you think about it, and right now you look at a bunch of egos in one building and on all different sides of the equation. Management ego, head coaching ego. The only people that probably don't have an ego are the coordinators who are basically getting screwed. Think about this. Essentially, this is why I hate keeping Sirianni. When I look at this is why I hate keeping Sirianni. Because at the end of the day, I gotta stop saying that. I say at the end of the day all the time. I hate that. I gotta find out a different, a different way to lead in to comments. I'll work on myself as I'm on the air, right? But I don't want Sirianni back because I still think that these coordinators are getting screwed. I think Desai got a raw deal, like I said. In essence, I think Brian Johnson gets a raw deal because he was never really given a chance to run his friggin' offense. We technically, we are never going to know. And then what are you going to do? You're going to bring two guys in and you're going to overrule them again? That's why I said, here's the thing. This is when we'll know. This is when we'll know. If they bring in other coordinators again that Nick Sirianni is going to overrule, instead of bringing in guys that are 100% more polished and seasoned, then we already know. It's simple. I drink. Joe says, I drink every time you say end of the day. I don't know why I say end of the day. It's so crazy. Javon says, it would be funny if Johnson decide to go somewhere else and have success. You know what's funny? Think about that. I said this last night, Javon, and I think you'll agree. Number one, there's got to be a reason why Brian Johnson is getting these head coaching opportunities. This has nothing to do with the Rooney Rule, man. So all them people out there talking about the Rooney, stop with the bullshit. It has nothing to do with it. He is a very well respected, intelligent, and well spoken individual who obviously knows a lot of X's and O's. And essentially, one day could actually be competition for Nick Sirianni. So these other teams would not be calling Brian Johnson if they did not feel he was a good leader for a team. They just wouldn't. Okay. Sean Desai, again, I say this, I said it last night, I'll say it again, man. This was the assistant head coach to Pete Carroll. And you're going to tell me that Sean Desai, learning from Pete Carroll, doesn't have a pedigree of at least learning some of those crucial intangibles that other coaches don't have, and you never gave him a chance. Gave him half a year. It just doesn't make sense, except the fact that Nick Sirianni, like my man Starship said, is an egomaniac. Nick Sirianni has to be in control. And here's another thing to think about. If Nick Sirianni is an egomaniac, if Nick Sirianni has to be in control, you know why maybe he has to be in control? Because he knows that's the only thing he can control. Because he knows he is powerless when it comes to anything else, because that's the role he accepted when he took the head coaching job of the Philadelphia Eagles. So in 29 minutes and 37 seconds, I think we just figured out the Eagles situation. I really do. Joe says AJ Smith and Goddard would be lethal with the competent play. Could you imagine? Can you imagine? And let's throw, I'm going to be honest with you. Let's throw D Swift in there too. Can you imagine if Kyle Shanahan was the OC and we gave him Hurts, DeAndre Swift, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert? Are you kidding me? Think about it. Think about it. It's crazy. It's crazy. They would be so good. Now, here's a good point. Joe says if he is an egomaniac, he would take over play calls. That's why I say he's a coward and clueless. Good point. But do you think that he was told that was off limits? Right? Do you think that he was told? Because again, if we're saying this was a package deal when Hurts signed this contract, that Brian Johnson was going to be the OC and be elevated because that was his guy. If you think about that, wouldn't that mean that maybe he's off limits? That Nick said, I can't even say anything to this guy. It's just, it's eerily dark and dungy, man. I hate to say that, but seriously, it's eerily dark and dungy with this whole story and everything coming out. It's almost like we need like an ESPN 30 for 30 or something, or ESPN and 60 or something that's going to come out. Like, you know, and all these things are going to come out about what happened. It's just too crazy. Javon says they choose not to run the ball when they should have this season, which makes you wonder if Swift comes back. Remember, before the Eagles came back from a 2-5 start in year one, he refused to run. That's a good point. The way DeAndre Swift talked the other day, I definitely don't think he comes back. I don't. I just think that I think DeAndre Swift knows right off the top of the bat that, you know, he's cooked with the Eagles, meaning they're not going to give him anything. They don't think anything of him, obviously. They were using Kenny Gainwell a lot. So what do they, you know, they don't value the running back position. So I think any offer that they give him would be laughable because they're not going to listen. They didn't pay Miles Sanders, and Miles Sanders wasn't asking for a ton of money. So think about it. D Swift, unfortunately, he's probably gone. You know, Joe says, so if that's the case, they neutered him and an egomaniac wouldn't stand for it and continue to be a company man. There you go. I like that. They neutered him, and an egomaniac wouldn't stand for it and continue to be a company man. I mean, it, it's definitely intriguing line of thinking when it comes to this whole script. It is. And it's got the national eye. And that's the funny thing. It's got the national eye. Everybody's looking at this. Everybody. And can we just, I got a comment on a couple things. I brought this up the other day. I'm going to bring it up again. You know, you have Shady out there jumping on speak and talking about, when you're a $200 million guy, you got to be able to do what you need to do. And again, I just, Shady, I like Shady, right? I like him. He hasn't changed. Well, that is the problem, though. He hasn't changed. And again, he's really not taking everything in consideration here. And that's the problem. I don't care how much money you're paid. Yes, you're paid to be the leader. You're paid to be a game changer. You're paid to take over a game. You're right. Absolutely. You're paid to take over a game. But at that same token, if you're not given the tools needed to take over that game, how can we be mad at you? But here's what boggles my mind about that. Not only did he have the tools, he had plenty of tools. But again, the coaches didn't allow him to use the tools properly. So there's so many ways to look at this. But for people to say already, I saw a couple of people say Jalen Wentz and this is Carson Wentz all over again, and we paid the wrong guy. Like, listen, man, like, again, it's just, I don't understand. I continue to have issues with people that automatically want to come out and bury Jalen Hurts. And I think a lot of them, especially when you talk about, in radio and on specific podcasting networks, I do think they do it specifically just to get a rise. It's Philadelphia. They know that as soon as they do it, the Philly faithful is going to come running and putting them in their mentions and atting them on X and breaking them out on Facebook and tagging them on IG. I get it. I understand. It's easy for you, man. It's low hanging fruit. You can add it to your media kit. You can talk about your views, your likes, and your followers. Congratulations. But again, man, it's all getting old. It is. You're listen. No way. There's no way. 100% that you can judge Jalen Hurts off of this year. Just too much. There's too much going on, man. There's just too much going on. Look, a great example, and I know people have talked about this, but we haven't talked about this on this show. Okay. There's one thing we haven't talked about on this show is the whole, well, if he had a better or the whole coordinator situation. So, and what I mean by that is, if you remember in the beginning of the year, the Buffalo Bills looked like a team that was just totally out of sync. Totally out of sync. And then they decide, we're going to make a move. And what they're going to do is they're going to get rid of Ken Dorsey and they're going to bring in Joe Brady. Joe Brady, brilliant young offensive mind. And lo and behold, what happens? The Buffalo Bills offense starts to click. Different plays, all of a sudden, James Cook turns into a monster. Dalton Kincaid finally getting the plays. Josh Allen finally looks like playing the Josh Allen strengths. letting Josh Allen be reckless, letting Josh Allen run through walls. Show that ruthless aggression. You get that because we're going to talk John Cena later. Ruthless aggression. To get that ruthless aggression as a football player, it's amazing, man. It's amazing. And we refuse to do it this year. We refused to do it this year. Joe says, luckily Dallas is staying with McCarthy, so it's a push. Hopefully Harris doesn't bring in Vrabel because he'd make a difference in a year. And what Joe's talking about is Josh Harris with the Washington Commanders. And me and Joe are both Mike Vrabel guys. I know Javon's a Vrabel guy. Starship, are you a Vrabel guy? No, I'm a Vrabel guy. He's that guy that can come in and instantly change the culture, instantly command the respect of the players because he's done it. He's done it. I always say that, right? I've consistently, I always feel like when you're hiring a coach, any coach that has played the game and played the system is always going to be revered and more respected. I think that's obvious, right? But I think it's so much more than that. It's that next level of respect. Mike Vrabel comes in and instantly plays on the New England Patriots. Sorry, Howie, that is the gold standard. Whether we want to like it or not, that is the gold standard, right? Mike Vrabel understands the game of football. Mike Vrabel, again, was on winning teams. Mike Vrabel knew because he was a teammate on how to treat a franchise quarterback. Mike Vrabel also knows the importance of the offense and defensive line. So much so that he consistently spent extra time with both of those guys or both of those lines in the film room. Mike Vrabel is a player's coach. Mike Vrabel's a guy that stands in front of the locker room and goes up to every single guy and talks about one thing that they did good in that game. And I pride myself on that. I've said that before. I as a soccer coach, that's one thing I would tell my kids all the time. I would say to them, listen, I would literally sit out or I should say, I would literally point out one thing that every single one of you guys did good today because I'm watching it. And I'm watching it because I want those guys to understand that I'm buying in. And once they understand that I'm buying in, they're going to buy in. It's a two-way street. It's like if one of those players comes up and asks you a question about a point of the game and you can't answer, they're going to look at you like, well, what were you doing? Why weren't you watching? You're preaching to me on the sideline and you're saying to me all the time, you better get your head out of your ass and watch this game. Watch what that guy at your position's doing. You better know what when you go in, what you need to do, what the plan of attack is. So if I'm asking you to pay attention, why the hell am I not paying attention? That's why I love Vrabel, man. Adam says he loves Vrabel. Starship says, I like Vrabel 100%. Truly a leader, very inspirational, very huge leader. He's a leader of men. See, that's the thing about Vrabel. He's not just a leader of a football team. He's a leader of men. And that's where I have an issue with Sirianni. Because if you are a leader of men, then what happened this year doesn't happen in Philadelphia. I'm not saying you won't lose and collapse, but you're not going to lose the locker room. You're not going to have guys like A.J. Brown, decide not to talk, then talk. You're not going to have, guys like, Darius Slay deciding to say whatever the hell he wants on his show and like you're not going to see that. And you know why? Because Mike Vrabel demands more. Mike Vrabel demands more. Think about the adversity that Mike Vrabel dealt with. He knew he didn't want to get rid of A.J. Brown. Listen, you can rewatch that draft over and over and over again and watch that reaction. He couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. Right away, put you as a head coach in a disadvantage. Takes away your number one playmaker from the offensive side of the room besides Derrick Henry. And speaking of Derrick Henry, remember all the speculation about Derrick Henry about will Derrick Henry be traded? Will he still be a Tennessee Titan? There was a lot of adversity that Mike Vrabel had to deal with that whole situation. Understanding how to utilize Derrick Henry to still make him successful and still make him DeAndre Hopkins coming over, new quarterbacks, deciding to bench Ryan Tannehill and going with Will Levis. There's so many different things that Mike Vrabel had to do. But again, how much crap did you hear coming out of Tennessee? Not much. Not much. I mean, Derrick Henry damn near gave his own goodbye farewell tour in the stadium. You don't think that had Vrabel had something to do about that? Of course he did. I love Mike Vrabel. I said it a few years ago. I remember saying, man, I love the way Vrabel coaches. And it was always here's what I loved about Vrabel. It's not easy to coach against your mentor. And let's face it, if you don't realize it, you don't know. The mentor we're talking about obviously is Bill Belichick. And over the years, the chess match when Tennessee would play New England of Vrabel versus Belichick, Vrabel won most of the time. There was a lot of time, even with time management, understanding what way Bill Belichick was going to lean. And that's not easy. When you go up against your mentor, when you go up against a guy you highly respect, the first inclination you have is to kind of back off a little bit because you're afraid. Listen, you don't want to show this guy up. Even though if your mentor is a real human being, they would be happy for your success, but you just never know how they're going to react. So you already have those indecisions in your head. So I look at it and I say, okay, Vrabel went right past that and won the chess match against his mentor. That's not easy to do, and that speaks volumes. You talk about a head coach, and that's the intangibles I look at when we talk about a guy like Mike Vrabel. Javon says people forget that Hurts has been playing with a banged up knee that likely never healed properly. Then you don't give him hot reads against the blitz, not setting him up for success. Never understood it. I'll still never understand it. Just let's again, speaking to coaching, you have a $200 million investment that not only you can't afford to get hurt because you have that stiff Marcus Mariota on the bench, but he's already banged up, already has a bad knee. So you would think as a normal person, you would devise a game plan that would, number one, get the ball out quick, and number two, do a lot more runs with your running backs to protect your quarterback and his health. Nah, we'd rather have him run for his life. We'd rather have deep go routes. We'd rather him take every opportunity to try to get re-injured or injure the knee even worse. Again, makes 0 sense. Makes 0 sense. Starship says Nick Nick, and he's speaking to the creating his own narratives and and formulating the debates and arguments. I can't stand that dude, man. Seriously. I will be honest with you. When he first came out, before all of a sudden, he wanted to look like he was eating at the Last Supper. I actually respected him and some of his opinions because I thought they were really well thought out. I thought they were really thought out. I thought he actually brought up some really, really good points. But then all of a sudden he got on this tangent to where he wanted to have all these hot takes and all these fabricated debates and he was looking for more and more coverage and all of a sudden he got the Floby and he wanted to act like I remember he used to wear suits and tie and all of a sudden now he's wearing hoodies and he's got the surfer boy hair and it just he just changed his entire character. So to me that's not authentic and I stopped liking him because of that. And I'm glad I did because now I can't even listen to him. I can't even listen to him. My man David says, did you ever hear of A2D radio? Absolutely. Tom Arnone, Mr. No Notes, is a good acquaintance of mine. We talk often. I don't always agree, no pun intended, agree to disagree. I don't always agree with Tom has to say, but I do respect the passion and the grind that Tom puts in to build that network up as high as he can. And Tom does a ton of coaching, man. Ton of coaching. He mentors a lot of kids. He does a lot of instruction. So Tom, listen, you look at Tom right away, you're like, honestly, I'm out, dude, no notes. But I can tell you, man, he's a really good dude. Very, 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 very great mind. And number one, man, he definitely tries to build up our youth. So anybody that volunteers their time, or even if they get paid, it doesn't matter. But if they're working with our youth and trying to make them better, I'm always going to respect them. So yeah, I definitely heard of A2D. Not just Tom. There's a couple guys. My man Pete's over there. So I like those guys too. I like a couple of those guys in that group. I think they're consistent, man. They're consistent. I don't always have to agree with your content. I don't always have to agree with your takes, but what I'll tell you is if you're consistent with it, I'm going to be a fan because this is a grind. And it's a grind that a lot of people get burned out with. It's a grind that people stay inconsistent with. And it's a grind that unless you have the passion, unless you have the energy, you're going to fall short. And those guys continue to push it, man. So hats off to A2D as always. And Mr. No Notes himself. Adam says, wonder at what point where the players start not listening to Sirianni, stop buying in. I'll be honest with you. I think it was happening all along. And we have to remember that. How many times did we say, well, they won. That's what really matters. It wasn't pretty, but they won. How many weeks did we say this is going to be a week they break out? This is going to be the week they break out, right? We consistently said that. They still showed at that point, Adam, that they were still something going on and they were still fighting through something within that locker room. And I think that's when people started to not listen to the message. When people start saying, listen, man, if nobody's going to say something, I'm going to do something about this myself. And that's when everybody start getting off the wrong page. That's exactly what happened. They start getting on the wrong page. They start getting off the right direction, and everything was just mass chaos. Joe asked, will Belichick get a job? Ellis, and he saw about Rob for WIP, he said Atlanta, but I don't see. I know he interviewed with Atlanta already. I know Arthur Blank wants a veteran guy. You have to remember Arthur Blank, he kind of went the same route with Arthur Smith, the same way that Jeffrey Lurie went with Chip Kelly, in the sense that he was like the hot and trendy thing. And I think it blew up in his face a little bit. So I think Arthur Blank now says, you know what? I'm going to go back old school and I want a veteran guy. And I think that he is their top target. Now, here's the thing, odds are Bill Belichick, after dealing with what he dealt with this year with Matt Jones and Bailey Zappi, he's thinking to himself, do I want to go another place where I may not have a quarterback? He's not going to be sold on Desmond Ridder, right? And are there going to be plans to where there is a quarterback in play? Or are they going to try to move up in a draft again and draft a guy? So you just don't know what they're thinking. as far or what he's thinking as far as that particular position, which is why I think a lot of people are pushing him out to the Chargers specifically because of Justin Herbert, which would make sense, right? But I still the Atlanta the Atlanta name just it has a lot of smoke behind it, which to me always means like we know there's fire, and I think Arthur Blank targeted it somebody because here's the thing: if you remember, Arthur Blank came out with that dreaded vote of confidence. He came out with that dreaded vote of confidence for Arthur Smith like halfway through the year, and everybody was like, "Okay, here's the vote of confidence. Maybe he's going to give him another shot." And then when the whispers start happening, when Belichick became available, that's when all of a sudden the fuel of Arthur Blank or Arthur Smith being pushed out, then all of a sudden it started to be real. And that's why I think this Belichick thing makes sense. So I do. And I think Arthur Blank will give him some power. And he already said he was willing to relinquish some power in order to either stay in New England or accept a job somewhere else. He doesn't need to have full control. But he would definitely have an owner who 100% is not afraid to write a check. And here's the thing: when you look at it, their defense played absolutely tremendous at times. They have a tremendous young foundation with three guys in Kyle Pitts, in Drake London, and Bijan Robinson. And they have a really, really good number two in Tyler Algier. And they have a decent offensive line. And let's not make no mistake about it. I'm not saying Desmond Ridder can't play in the NFL. Just don't think he's a starting quarterback, but he'd be one hell of a backup. So, essentially, I think this falls on, can they get a quarterback in there that's actually going to make sense for the Atlanta Falcons? Can they get a quarterback that's actually going to make sense? And I think if they do, I think that's where Belichick goes. Now, Adam says you think wherever Vrabel goes, he will try to bring Derrick Henry with him. Possibly, but Derrick Henry wants to win a ring. All right, Derrick Henry puts himself through a tremendous, rigorous offseason program, along with his in-season regimen as well. But he's a guy who continues to keep himself in phenomenal shape. But he also knows a guy that runs that hard and is that big, he's gonna slow down quick. He's going to slow down quick. And Derrick Henry knows that. I think Derrick Henry, by coming out and saying he wants to compete for a ring, Derrick Henry understands. He's smart enough to say, I know I can't carry the rock 25 times anymore. But you know where he would look good? I keep saying it, man. You know where he would look really good? It's Kansas City. I hate to say it, but you think about a 1-2 punch. You have Isaiah Pacheco out there, and I know they were always with the McKinnon and CEH, but the hell with that, man. You could turn Sky Moore next year when he's healthy into that McKinnon type role, and then you can pound it with Derrick Henry to protect your guy and Patrick Mahomes, and then you have that speedy freak in Isaiah Pacheco along with the evolution of Rashee Rice. I think obviously there's a place right there where he competes for a ring. Another place would be Green Bay, ending the AJ Dillon experiment. You have Aaron Jones locked up for another year or two. He signed that 4-year, I think $40 million deal a couple of years ago. So I think he's got 2 years left. And, 100%, if you look at it in Green Bay, that's what they're missing as well. They were trying to get that bulldozer to be AJ Dillon. It didn't work out. But that's a team that's on the come up. That's a team that can win a ring in the next year or two, which is where Derrick Henry wants to go. But you're right. Again, Joe, Pacheco and Henry, man, would help out Kermit, me, and Patrick Mahomes so much. That would be, I'll tell you what, that would be one hell of a 1-2 punch, man. I don't even know if that would be fair. Think about it. I don't know if that would be fair. But again, we see it happen all the time, right? See it happen all the time. Starship says, I say Atlanta against Jaden Daniels. I could see that. I could definitely see a Jaden Daniels fit. I just think of anywhere to land Bill Belichick. I think that the top team of someone who's looking for a vacancy is got to be, to me, is going to be Atlanta. Just taking at what they have to offer as far as talent, who their owner is, and what kind of power that they're going to want in return, or what kind of power he's going to want in return, and they're going to have to relinquish. So I think that is a fit. If it happens, we shall see. Now, Adam says, did you see 94-1 brought back Spike Eskin with Ike Reese? Yeah, I saw it. I mean, again, Adam, here's what I say, and I continue to say this, and I think Joe is a Philly radio guy, so he knows. It's just another retread, man. Like I can't. I know people don't like certain guys, some of the young guys, but it just can't always be the same personalities, man. Like you have to get some new blood. Seriously, like my thing is, we know who Eskin is, and I'm going to be honest with you, man. Let's call this the way it is. Here's why I'm going to tell you, Adam, real fast, and I don't want to get on a big tangent about this because I do want to talk a little Sixers about Tobias Harris before we get out of here, and I want to talk about John Cena at the end. But when Spike Eskin was here, when he was here, and he was program director, one of his biggest claims to fame of trying to get WIP, which they have succeeded, obviously, to their ratings winner. Because at that time, remember, in the beginning, 97.5 was winning out because Mike Missinelli had that afternoon slot. He was Mike Missinelli held it down. A letter went out. I'm telling you right now, a letter went out, and I'm pretty sure. And I actually even say, listen. If anybody covered it, was Cross and Broad, right? It was Kevin Kincaid and Kyle Pagan. At that time, I think it definitely was Cross and Broad. But the thing, the information came out that Spike, in order to win the ratings, sent out to all his hosts, you need to start arguments. You need to start arguments with the callers. You need to start arguments with each other. You basically need to fabricate an opinion in order to get a rise out of either the audience or your co-host. And right there, I was turned off. Because again, how can you believe in what you speak in if everything is a fabrication? And why does that always have to make for good radio? At the end of the day, listen, there it goes, Joe. I just said end of the day, so I hope you're drinking. But it's 12:07. We've been live for over an hour right now. And we've literally walked through scenarios about the Eagles, about other head coaches. No arguments. We don't always agree. But why can't we just have a conversation? Why does everything have to be a debate or an argument? And I say it all the time. I'm really starting to turn over a new leaf in the fact that I just want to say I've been blessed to witness some extreme talent in the world of sports. No more LeBron versus Michael. No more Allen versus Kobe. No more, Shaq versus Duncan. No, bro, I saw them all, man. I'm happy. I got to see them all. And right now, I'm watching Joel Embiid. I'm watching Nikola Jokic. I don't care who's better. I don't. I just got to watch a fantastic game last night. And I think we all will agree, if we take our fandom away just for a little bit, we could say, wow, what a time to be a sports fan. You think about even throughout those three peats with Michael on both of them, 91, 92, 93, 96, 97, 98. As much as I'm not a huge Karl Malone guy, because I thought he cried over everything, I got to watch Karl Malone and John Stockton in their prime. I got to watch that New York Knicks squad with guys like Big Pat Ewing, Guys like Xavier McDaniel and Anthony Davis and Charles Smith and John Starks. And, the list goes on and on and on and on. Blessed. Got to watch that Seattle Supersonics team with Sean Kemp, who people forget how good Sean Kemp really was. Detlef Shrimp, there's a name for you. Good old Detlef Shrimp did everything. Got to watch those Indiana Pacers teams. Reggie Miller, the Davis brothers. Tremendous. Rick Smits, the Flying Dutchman. Right? Think about it. I mean, if Rick Smits didn't have plantar fasciitis, man, he might still be playing. No, I'm just kidding. He would still be playing, but he was that damn good. I'm blessed, man. I think we're all blessed that lived in that era. So, again, I don't want to, that's why I don't like the arguments all the time. Now, I'd much rather say, I'd much rather look at what somebody said and try to dissect it instead of debate it. Like, because you can actually look at a statement one way professionally, and you might come out on the other side thinking, you know what? Now I see what he meant. But see, if you right away just go out full-blown smoke, coming hot right off the bat, that's going right past you. You're never going to see it. Joe says Spike is a Knicks fan. That's not good either. He's a New York guy talking about the Sixers. He's another flat brim clown. Wait, you're not a Right to Ricky Sanchez member, man? No lick face or whatever the hell they call it. That was never me. Adam says Embiid is a monster and Jokic was killing it too last night. Just again, let's not leave out. See, here's another thing too. Everybody last night was so entrenched, and rightfully so, in the Embiid and Jokic factor, when essentially you had two guys in Tyrese Maxey and Jamal Murray just absolutely killing it from the guard position. Two up and coming, man, tremendous talents. So that's what I'm saying. Again, blessed to be able to do it. Joe says, which is right, because all that crap I'm not going to repeat that came out later. Karl Malone is one of the biggest POSs to play in the NBA. 100%. After all that stuff, absolutely. Adam said I had Sean Kemp shoes back in the day. Actually, I think I may have had a pair of Sean Kemps. As crazy as that may sound, I think I definitely had a share of Sean Kemp's. Sean Kemp, man, what a crazy athletic, uncoordinated, but tremendous ball player. We said dad too, because I think he had like 30 kids. But and it is true too. He had so many kids, man. He had kids. He had so many kids. Like he had the kid in every city, man. It's crazy. Every time, you know what he was doing on the off days when they were traveling, right? But I think Sean Kemp doesn't get talked enough about, man. Look, see. Joe says again, Joe comes in what I was thinking. Says Kemp sneakers made you fertile. He was amazing. He was, man. Listen, he had some get-ups that I ain't seen in a long time. And he had like tremendous calves and legs, the way his legs were formed, like muscular legs, but he had those long ass strides and he kind of had a big torso, which he had to carry around, but he was able to get it done, man. I mean, he would throw it down with some force. Man. Sean Kemp, again, Hall of Famer? No. Good basketball player? Yes, absolutely. Somebody I remember vividly. Yeah, the Supersonics, man. I wish they would bring those Supersonics jerseys back, Adam. I mean, we didn't even talk about him getting to play with Gary Payton, the glove, right? Gary Payton, the glove. I mean, the real Gary Payton when it was Seattle Gary Payton. There's another player, man. Now, speaking of that, while we're talking about basketball, I watched the broadcast last night, and I'm listening to, which I do. I really like Jamal Crawford. I like Jamal Crawford. I do like Candace. I think she does a good job. Not a big Lefko guy. And I like Shaq. I'll be honest with you. I like Shaq, and Candace came out and was talking about Sixers need to make a move. They're one piece off. They're one piece off. And Shaq was like, nah, they don't need another piece. They got Tobias. And he said if Tobias is going to give them, 12 to 15 and 6 to 8 rebounds every night, that is their number three. They don't need, and I'm curious because I said this on Twitter, I think. I don't think I said it on the show, but how ironic is it that we force paid Tobias? He got killed by me included because obviously he wasn't worth the money, but he was giving it to it because that's the way the structure and the contract read, right? What I mean by that is what the union, the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement read. Because of that, he was able to get that max. And that was a year, obviously, they let Jimmy Butler go and they had money. They had to do something to save face. So they signed Tobias Harris, who I will say, Tobias Harris did a whole lot in the community. Really good dude, man. I'll be honest with you. Like when I was reading about what he did in the community and what he would do off the court, it actually made me sad for bashing him so much. I really did. I was like, and I started thinking about like he didn't ask to be paid that money. They offered it to him. What's going to say no? My thing was, I just didn't understand why the guy that we watched play in Detroit, specifically the guy who played with the Clippers, was not the guy that we got. And now the ironic thing is we finally have a coach in Nick Nurse that implores an offensive system and allows him to be the Tobias Harris of the Clippers, a Tobias Harris of the Pistons. And now it's the last year we have him anyway. So I'm curious, do you think he's enough? Is he that third piece? Do you think that when you go in a series now, Candace had a good point. She's like, well, this is different in the regular season. Once the playoffs and they double team Joel Embiid, they're going to need that other guy out there to be able to make shots. I'm not sure if that's going to be Tobias. So I'm not sure either. I'm not. Joe says it was so pleasant in the ears listening to the Sixers on TNT rather than the homers. Even Van Gundy is better than listening to the local crew. I don't know, man. Like I like Ala. I like Kate. I think Kate's done a really good job. I think she elevated her game from last year. I actually do like listening to her. I'll be honest with you, I'm not a Doris Burke fan. A lot of people love Doris Burke. I'm not a Doris Burke fan. I don't know why. Just something rubs me the wrong way about Doris Burke. I know she's an OG. She's been doing it a long time. But Stan Van Gundy, oh my God. What a stiff. I can't listen to that guy at all. I just can't. That guy is such a fraud. And then I think, not to, obviously I'll quote anybody, but I think Tyrone Johnson quoted out about that on 97.5 about how basically he was just up there running like a podcast. That's the way he was talking. Like this dude has no clue how to be an announcer or a host, I should say. He was terrible. It's terrible. I couldn't listen to him. Just couldn't listen to him. I put the damn thing on mute and start doing some of my show prep. Adam says maybe they should go with what they got because if the Sixers bring in another person, it might mess up the chemistry of the team, which is a great point. That's a great point, and that's what I want to get into. That chemistry, man, it can't be understated. Chemistry is huge. When you and they're clicking, man. They are clicking right now. So we have to be very, very careful that we don't screw this up. This could be the biggest decision Daryl Morey has made yet. It really could. When you think about it, it really could, because this is the best they've played in a very long time. And if you bring somebody in and mess that chemistry up, you're screwed. But if you don't bring somebody in and they fall short, you're screwed because everybody's been like, you should have brought somebody in. So I don't think Daryl Morey can actually win right now, no matter what he does. But one thing's for sure, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Now, I think if somebody becomes available pretty cheap, I don't think they're going to spend all their assets. But if there's an opportunity for them to get somebody on the cheap, I think they'll definitely add a player or two, possibly another shooter coming off the bench. And no, it's not for Concord Maz. So I think that, looking at it as a whole, I definitely think that Tobias Harris playing like this Tobias Harris is certainly enough, but as a backup insurance plan, I still think they make a move for somebody that can give them some minutes off the bench. Now, speaking of the bench, a guy that's never been on the bench. And again, this Heat Ratio Sports HRS Late Nights. I'm Tony Cutillo, your host. Make sure you're following and subscribing to the show. As always, appreciate the support. Doing this mostly every night, Monday to Thursday, 11 to 1 or 11 to 12 or 11 to 12:30, depending on how the discussion goes. You can get involved in the conversation by commenting. You can call in on the live number, which I posted in the chat, or you can check us out on Facebook or X right now, or you can watch tomorrow morning. Bump it up tomorrow morning on your way to work or in the gym. It'll be available for your listening pleasure. Now, looking at the month of June or January, we know it's Royal Rumble season, and we always have these surprise entrants. But I talked a little about the Rumble yesterday, but tonight what I want to talk about is a guy who's won multiple Royal Rumbles, and that's the legendary John Cena. John Cena was definitely a guy we didn't expect to take the spotlight and basically take the baton from The Rock. We did not expect it. I know I didn't expect it. I don't think anybody really in the wrestling business expected it. The way he came out and the way he was dressed, and nobody wears jean shorts, and he had pumps his shoes, and he was Dr. Thugonomics, and he came out with the big chain, and he was always rapping, which was a very interesting gimmick, which it worked, right? It worked. But the problem was after that, it almost seemed like they weren't sure. Good guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy. And they essentially just made him into the next Hulk Hogan. I mean, let's face it. He was the guy, say drink your, eat your vitamins, say your prayers, drink your milk, all that kind of stuff. I mean, the same thing, John Cena preaches. And he's coming up on his time to where retirement is in the very near future. I have to ask, does he get a retirement match? Does he get a match? Does he go out on his own, volition? Does he just say, you know what, I'd rather just walk away, come back from time to time? I honestly think that, John Cena really paved the way for so many other wrestlers. Showed that you didn't have to have the flashy look in order to be recognized. You didn't have to be a tribal chief in order to show that you can get ratings. You were able to do it on your own. Adam says, I remember when John Cena first came out, Kurt Angle said, what are you here for? Ruthless aggression. Exact ruthless. And there's that ruthless aggression. But what John Cena did was he really took over the whole entertainment role, especially when it came to the promos. He was the king, man. I still, obviously Rock, nobody will ever top Rock, but you're always looking for that next guy to be able to hold the microphone, and that whole rant between him and Roman Reigns was epic. Never forget it. I could watch it over and over again too. That's how cool it was. Joe says, has seen a cycle for the Rumble because he was yeah, I know, that's the thing, man. He definitely is not the same size, Joe. Hollywood, and that's the thing, and that's what I'm saying. He's starting to ponder his in-ring retirement. But what I wanted to ask everybody, do you think he gets one last shot? And what I mean by that is, does he get one last run as champ? Remember when Ric Flair, he was getting up there, he was going, and he was going through the tour internally in WWE. They were giving him that send out tour, was doing specific matches every week. Does Cena get the same kind of deal, or does he even want the same kind of deal? Do you think he wants to be champ one more time? I don't know if he does, but one thing for sure, I don't think anybody's ever respected that championship more than John Cena. John Cena took WWE to a new height. He did to more than I ever thought he would. Adam says, "You think they're going to have Roman Reigns?" Yes, 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 yes. They 100%. I think they're going to have Roman Reigns break Hogan's record. I said that a couple weeks ago, and add on the reason why is because again, Roman Reigns. I'll say it, and I'm going to continue to say it. Whether Roman Reigns retires this year, whether he retires 10 years from now, whether he doesn't retire, one thing is for certain: Roman Reigns will not wrestle for another organization throughout the rest of his career. Hulk Hogan left. So I'm telling you right now, especially with some of the things that happened with Hogan, they want to get him erased out of that book. They really do. So thinking about that, I think it's a perfect opportunity for them to continue this streak. It's just going to be interesting on how they book things because there's a lot of booking scenarios that we have to look at, a lot of them. And I'm not sure that they're ready for like a mass storyline like that because they still have the bloodline going on. Now, Joe says Cena might not have the schedule to be champ with the Peacemaker series at constant Honda commercials. I still, Joe, I'm gonna be honest with you, man. How do you let Nikki get away? Is he crazy? Just saying, man. It's calling it the way it is. Let's be honest. Like, what is he nuts? Walking away from Nikki Bella? I mean, all because she didn't want to have kids? Crazy, man. Crazy if you ask me. But again, you never know what's going through the mindset of these wrestlers. They work a rigorous schedule, and again, you just never know. I honestly think that internally, if he had the time, I think they would look at him going one last go around. Could be like a 3-month title run, having redoing the promos between him and CM Punk. I think would be epic. I do. I think it would be epic. I think if Rock came back, having him go one on one with the great one. See, that's the thing, man. I could promo Rock all day long. He says he grew hair and got crazy. Yeah, I don't like the haircut on Cena, man. I'm not a big. I don't like it. He needs to keep the hat on. I do not like seeing him like that. It makes you feel really, really, really old. Uh, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. One thing's for sure, I think he has more of an opportunity to get the last run now that Triple H is running the asylum and not Vince McMahon. Adam says I was surprised they kept Roman Reigns winning because there are a lot of people who deserve the belt. There is, and that's why they created the World Heavyweight Championship that Seth Rollins has. Who, by the way, Seth Rollins could have re-injured the knee and be out for an extended period of time, which then again they would need somebody to step in that role. That's not going to be John Cena. That's definitely not going to be John Cena. But I would like it to be a guy like I think the guy I think deserves it the most, to be honest with you, is Gunther. I don't think people realize how good Gunther is. Like he literally is a throwback, and he is so crazy strong. So I think at that token, they'll give a guy like that anything he wants, right? And that's the thing. So I, I just, you know, I look at that match last night and say, why the hell did it happen? And what I mean by that is, well, I should say Monday night when we talk about Jinder Mahal against Seth Rollins, so close to the pay per view, and that's when he gets injured, and that's a shame because I think it was a worthless match. It makes no sense whatsoever. Adam says, "Do you think CM Punk will get the title soon?" Has to, has to. I mean, that's the whole reason why he came back, right? So they're definitely gonna put the belt on him, give him one run, and I just don't know when it's going to be. Adam says, "Who wins the Rumble?" That's a great question. So here's what I will tell you: when you want to look at who's going to win the Royal Rumble, you kind of have to look at the entire storyline that's happening, and you gotta kind of have to forward think about if this guy wins, How does it change the whole narrative of the match? So that's what you have to look at. So looking at the contestants now for the women, I still think it's going to be Bailey. I think Bailey wins the women's rumble. I think they're really tying this storyline with her and Io Sky and Damage Control, and I think it honestly it puts Bailey back into a babyface kind of role. But we shall see. Which I'm really surprised at because I think she's like the best heel I've ever seen. Honestly, even overall too, male female, she's so good. She's so good. Um, I think Gunther's another guy. I think Gunther could essentially win the Royal Rumble. I think there again now Brock's coming back. I think they're going to set up a storyline with Brock Lesnar and Gunther. That'll actually keep Gunther out of the title picture for a little bit. It'll keep him, have the Intercontinental belt. It'll keep him out of the world title picture. Then possibly maybe you can parlay him into a summer feature, getting up to SummerSlam. So that should be interesting. LA Knight. I love LA Knight, but I feel like LA Knight, they missed the boat again. I think that the momentum that he had kind of shifted. They brought CM Punk back. Everybody, all of a sudden now Roman's back. So I think a guy like LA Knight doesn't get as much play time because again, nobody else is, or I shouldn't say nobody else, but I don't think he gets that time because I think he had the opportunity against Roman Reigns, which I knew they weren't going to give him a belt, but he was red hot, red hot. And I think sometimes when you have guys like that are red hot, they kind of take them for granted. And then by the time they're ready to utilize him in a different, a different setting to get him in the storyline, it's too late. And I think that's what could have happened with LA Knight. I like LA Knight, been around a long time. Eli Drake, I forget the other role he played, but playing multiple roles in different companies and and I definitely like the way he's grown. But I don't are going to WrestleMania. As of now, I am not going to WrestleMania, but I am working on something where I could possibly be broadcasting from the link at WrestleMania. So we shall see. We shall see. But on that note, another great show. I'm at 12:30. Sometimes we go to 1 if we have a guest, but this one, listen, great conversation when it came to the Philadelphia Eagles and what they're going to do with the coaching. A great conversation about Tobias Harris and the Sixers. More good conversation about going around the NFL carousel, whether it be coaching or players. I thought we came up with some really good scenarios. And then some really good wrestling talk. Again, looking at it, who John Cena's last match, is it coming up? And if it is, who's it going to be again? So stuff we'll continue to talk about as the week progresses. Another great show, Jigs. This all bringing the heat is always. Thanks, buddy. Again, I love doing this, Adam. You've always been a constant supporter. So again, bigger and better things ahead, man. Always trying to do the next and coming thing, trying to give the people an alternative. That's all I want to do. Give people alternative. And tomorrow, speaking of alternative, it's our little Phillies tomorrow night. One of the the article, or I should say post that my man Javon tweeted out was talking about the top 10 second baseman in Major League Baseball with not a trace of Bryson Stott's name. Instant disrespect. We need to talk about that tomorrow night. We're actually going to talk about some baseball tomorrow night. So stay tuned for that. We didn't get to the hip hop talk tonight. We'll get to that tomorrow. Talk a little Mobb Deep. It's a little hip hop 50 voted the best bet ever. Shook ones. Is it? Was it? Want to get your opinion. As always, as the world turns with the Philadelphia Eagles, what is next for the team? What direction will they go in? And again, will we be happy? So as always, for Tony Cutillo, I'm going to be signing off. This is HRS Late Nights, Heat Ratio Sports. Make sure you're following the show. Make sure you're subscribed to the network. You're liking the show. And as always, you can join the show live every single night by just clicking on the link that we post. Make sure you look at all the other great content Heat Ratio Sports has to offer. I will be bringing the Final Judgment back pretty soon, which will be a standalone segment. We got some tremendous interviews that are posted up that we've done with guys like Chris Franklin and Sean Bernard. Also, Joe Madden of Sports Grid did a fantastic job. And we had a lot of good things ahead as well. A lot of good things ahead as well. My man Dave Gleckner just started up his Bell Ringer report where he talks about who's the best player in the NBA. Is it Jokic or Embiid? Pretty interesting. He's always chopping it up with some really, really good analytics and trying to get some other things going as well. So a lot of big things coming up. I always, as you know, like I say, always appreciate the support. And remember, even if you don't catch this live, you can catch it in the morning by just clicking play on the YouTube channel, on Facebook, on X, or wherever you look at your media digitally. But tomorrow's another day. We'll see what it has to bring for the Philadelphia Eagles. Will we be happy? Will we be sad? I don't know. But until then, we're going to sign off. Tony Cutillo, HRS Late Nights. Everybody stay safe. Everybody stay healthy. And we'll catch you tomorrow.